So good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to talk a little bit about how NRO is moving forward to continue embracing commercial GEOINT and a lot of the capabilities that you see across the pavilion here. Two topics in particular, if we could start the slides. No? All right. There we go. Next, please. Okay. So I wanted to talk about two things in particular. One was basically an evolution of some work we laid in place in a prior job of mine. That would be a little bit on the commercial GEOINT activity and a capability that we developed called the leaderboard. Some good new progress there, so I want to talk a little bit about that. And then a little bit more on NRO specifically and how NRO in particular is moving forward with commercial imagery and some items there. Okay, but first a little bit of background and how we got here. And really it came about from a nice gentle nudge from the D&I side. And really that helped both agencies move forward and do two things. One was establish the CGA, which was to help both agencies figure out a better way to leverage emerging and existing sources of commercial GEOINT. And by that I mean not just pictures and pixels, but really across the spectrum, from pixels all the way up through value-added products and services. Because we see a tremendous amount of opportunity across that entire space. And where it meets our needs, we need to be positioned to leverage that. But then in addition, it helped both agencies think about the most optimal way to leverage those emerging and existing sources. So that helped evolve some roles and responsibilities between the two agencies, frankly. And in particular, have NRO take on a role as the primary acquirer of commercial GEOINT imagery. By that we mean pixels. And then NGA basically continue to have purview and procure those sources of commercial GEOINT further up the value stream. Like I said, those analytic products and services. So that's the background, and let's see. All right, and a little bit more on CGA and where we've been able to come since the last year. The last GEOINT symposium, we rolled out this capability, something that we called the leaderboard, and it was a really interesting capability that was meant to do a couple things. It was meant to do a couple things for both industry and the government. One, for industry, it was a way to learn about our needs. It was a web-based platform where we could communicate kind of use case by use case our needs, and importantly, in an unclassified fashion. So we could have that dialogue of, for example, for pixels, this sort of resolution is useful to us in this use case, and this resolution isn't. This sort of revisit is for this particular use case. This is less useful. So something to kind of gauge your own capabilities against and better perhaps position yourselves to be of use to us. Certainly for us, it allowed industry to submit those capabilities and let us know what they are and allow us to measure you against those use cases. So of course, in the end and in the aggregate, if we wanted to pursue a specific use case and satisfy that, we would have a good understanding quantitatively of what the most optimal solution might be in any particular space, at least as we defined it. So a lot of successes there, and I'd like to thank many of you for submitting your inputs into this platform. We continue to have that available, and frankly, even in the NRO booth, we have a couple individuals walking companies through even all this week, inputting some new capabilities and continuing to learn how those things evolve. Now that said, that really is a first brush of basically your stated capabilities. There's a lot more to that for us to actually realize an operational capability. There's what you say the capability is, and then frankly we need to demonstrate that capability and really prove if there's a there. And by that I mean two different things. One, does the stated capability live up to what's actually delivered on our doorstep? And sometimes there are differences there. Sometimes there are very nuanced differences, but for us they can be very important differences. But another, sometimes even more important thing is how are we positioned as a government and with our architectures and workflows to take advantage of those capabilities? There could oftentimes be something that could be the best thing since sliced bread, but if we're just ill-prepared architecturally or again from a workflow perspective to take advantage of that, we can't take advantage of it. So then, of course, we have a couple different choices. One, do we just say we can't use it, it doesn't meet our needs, or is it a driving factor and a forcing function to get us to evolve that architecture? Because we do see the utility on the back end for that. And I think there's both sides of that out there. So anyway, a couple months ago, we snapped the chalk line, created something that we call the scouting report, and basically tried to articulate what we understood that was out there on industry side, or on the industry side. We did include some recommendations of things that were very interesting, that definitely had a lot of merit out there, that merited further exploration. And frankly, other things that were out there that we heard about that probably just didn't measure up. So we wanted to continue to watch and see how that evolves. And by virtue of doing that, I'm happy to report, along with, and probably even more importantly, some processes that NGA created to structure kind of those next few steps. We were able to successfully move forward on a couple demonstrations, and they weren't just pixels. You know, they were. I think one of them was more pixel-centric. The other one was a value-added service, and I'm really excited to see how those measure up and what we can learn from them, and on the road to obviously realizing a true operational capability. But because things don't stay static, of course, we're continuing to modify the leaderboard as well. You know, we folded in a bunch of enhancements that were derived from our experiences, just incorporating and talking to industry as they tried to submit their capabilities. There's definitely some room for improvement there, so we're continuing to iterate on that and develop probably a better, more intuitive input capability, and I'll say on the back end as well, you know, make it a little bit more user-friendly for the government. But then probably one of the things I'm most excited about, beyond just the increase in usability, is an extension to services. And this isn't quite operational yet. We're eagerly awaiting that in the very near term, as soon as we get through a couple other wickets. But it's, you know, as many of you can see here, it's not just about companies providing GEOINT products, be them pixels or analytic products, and basically just providing the answer. But a lot of companies and a lot of these capabilities, a lot of you provides services, right? Where it's not delivering the answer, it's delivering us the means to create that answer ourselves in new and more innovative ways. So we definitely see a lot of utility there. Frankly, sometimes there's even more potential upside there than the products themselves. So we're creating the capability to start talking about that and on the service side as well. So we're very excited about that. And of course, you have the URL down there for any of you that don't want to go swing by the booth or want to engage a little bit later on. Okay, so beyond CGA, though, a little bit to how NRO is moving forward with commercial imagery specifically. So I mentioned NRO is going to be the primary acquirer of commercial imagery. By that we mean pixels, and NGA would continue to have a role further up the value stream. A big part of that evolution, though, is making sure that through that change and any sort of transition that we don't break mission, right? Through us assuming any of these roles for any contract. Making sure that we continue to deliver that necessary capability that NGA is saying that is a firm requirement. You know, we're going to continue to live up to. So to really embrace this role, the NRO stood up a formal program office, and it's a program office to do a couple things. Obviously, it's to put the acquisitions in place, put the contracts in place, and really enable that capability. But also it's because this is not something that's going to be in a stovepipe. You know, we're working across the NRO and the NGA and the larger user community to make sure we can do this in a scalable and truly integrated fashion. So we're working to establish some of those external interfaces into the NRO ground architecture. Some of you may have even seen some of that through a recent RFI. You know, it came from a different part of the enterprise, but it's all to the same end. And then, of course, we also need to make sure that the entire enterprise really lines up behind this. So what we buy really gets the benefit, and that's really part of the value proposition of the NRO here is really gets the benefit of everything that we can bring to bear from both the processing side as well as all the other sources and methods that we have access to really wring as much value as we possibly can out of every image that we have access to. Of course, an initial focus here is the Enhanced View contract, which many of you heard probably repeatedly over the last 2 weeks. So certainly, as I said, a key part of this is making sure that through this transition, we don't drop any sort of ongoing mission capability. It is absolutely imperative that we don't do that, and we're not going to do anything to endanger that at all through this transition. We certainly have a target date that we're working through, but there are definitely a firm number of milestones and activities that we have to successfully prosecute in order to get there. Because of that, we've obviously structured a very deliberate risk management approach that focuses first on the contract. And then only thereafter pivoting some of the ground interfaces and doing some of those things that we see necessary for the future, frankly, to make better use of that data on our side. So. And so this is my last slide. I want to talk a little bit about some of the benefits, some of the why we're doing this. You know, as I said, It does play to some of our strengths and core competencies on both sides, on both NRO and NGA. You know, NGA continuing their functional management role, and NRO focusing on providing those pictures and laying in the groundwork to do that. And we see benefits really on two sides, both sides, both operationally and in an acquisition sense. In an acquisition sense, you know, I think there's tremendous sets of opportunities as we create our future architectures to make sure we only build what we have to, but buy everything we possibly can. So, you know, again, buy what we can and build what we must in order to, again, satisfy the functional management requirements. That's a key part, and commercial is going to be a truly integrated and an important part of that future architecture. There's no way to separate them, and there shouldn't be. Operationally as well, you know, we see a tremendous value stream of being able to draw out and wring as much value out of every image that we have, and really bring the entire enterprise to bear on continuing to satisfy these hard problems. So with that, that's all the charts I had, but wanted to open it up, obviously, for some questions and answers.
We do have a few questions. The first one is, how is this different from GSA Cube?
GSA Cube? Let's see. GSA Cube obviously is an initiative set forth by NGA and GSA. I think it's to help and is part of the overall cyborg effort. The way I think about that is that's supposed to ease entry to as a potential contract vehicle to any number of commercial providers. And I think it's a really interesting way to get access to and potentially ingest these things. There are certain circumstances where we'll use that vehicle. Other times we'll use other vehicles to procure and look to start ingesting these capabilities.
Great, thank you. Another question here on enhanced view. How will you adopt a more open and flexible architecture when it's due for renewal in 2020?
Yeah. So it all comes back to what the functional manager says the requirements are, and we'll continue to satisfy those requirements. Obviously, we'll do the right things in an acquisition and contracting steps to get there. But so an enhanced view and that provider is going to be a very important part of our future. But that said, they're not going to be the only provider out there. We're going to have needs for a variety of other pixel providers, and we're going to put the infrastructure and contracting in place in order to leverage those providers to every extent possible, because frankly, it would be silly not to.
Questions are pouring in. The next one, though, is about how do you plan to mitigate risk of competition between commercial imagery providers and national technical means capabilities?
Yeah, well, I think it's imperative on all of us to make sure, again, going back to if it's possible for commercial to do, and it's definitely within their wheelhouse, and they're doing it as an ongoing commercial business. You know, not only should we, but we have to take every advantage of that. And so we're only going to build systems and use those systems for those things that commercial can't support because of any number of reasons. But we're doing it in a very holistic way, and making sure that as we move forward, commercial is part and parcel to every decision we make. And even operationally, every task going forward, if commercial can satisfy it, it's going to go to a commercial source.
Great. And last year, you mentioned the importance of tip and cue. Is that still a key factor for commercial integration into NRO ground architectures?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it is an important part. It's part of bringing the entire enterprise to bear. Basically, we want to be able to use all of our access points to best satisfy the mission, and hopefully that's making sure that they all work seamlessly together. You know, otherwise, you know, you're just not taking every advantage.
Excellent. So in terms of the warfighter, how can you relate the operational synergies and enhanced interfaces that you spoke about? How will that impact our warfighters?
Well, I think there are a number of opportunities, and frankly, a number of opportunities that we're still working our way through and exploring. You know, of course, we look to NGA and the GEOINT Functional Manager to speak for the entire community, and that's ultimately who we're going to be directly responsive to. But of course, they have very important customers that they're responsive to in turn, and I think as we tailor and make sure that we meet those warfighter requirements, we can do those in new ways, especially as new commercial capabilities come to the fore. And I think where they provide utility, you know, we'll put every effort into making sure that we can make that available.
Great. Thank you very much, Peter. We appreciate your time.